One thing that burnout does is make the future impossibly large. A few years ago, I got a carryover in a course I genuinely believed I would pass. And the funny thing is, it wasn't because I was careless. I studied, I attended classes, I sacrificed sleep, and I did everything I was supposed to do. But when the result came out, I failed the course. And honestly, that carryover wasn't even the worst part. The worst part is that my grades has already been dropping for a while now, and I've already been telling myself that I'll try harder, the next semester will be better. But in that next semester, instead of getting better, I actually got a carryover this time around. That was the moment I started questioning everything and started feeling like maybe I wasn't smart enough. Maybe medicine isn't just for me, or like maybe I'm not meant for this kind of thing. I remember being completely burnt out and tired and at the verge of giving up. Like not the kind of tiredness that sleep fix. It was that type of tiredness that makes you want to quit, that makes you question your self-worth, and makes you want to just give up everything, like just stop trying entirely. Well, I survived. You won't believe that that was how my medical career would have ended even before it started. But luckily, I survived, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for holding on. But I didn't just survive because I wanted to. I survived because I actually put into consideration some things, and that's what I want to share with you now. The first thing I did was stop turning every setback into evidence that something is wrong with me. Yes. I stopped making it a me problem because when we are exhausted, our brains becomes terrible storytellers. One bad result becomes I'm a failure. One rejection becomes I always mess things up. But most times the reality is always different. Sometimes you genuinely did your best, but things didn't just work out the way you wanted it to. Sometimes effort doesn't immediately produce the result you wanted, and sometimes life just happens. And when I got that carryover, I had to separate the event from my identity. I only failed a call. That didn't mean that was a failure. Something went wrong. That didn't mean that something was wrong with me. That shift alone reduced so much of the self-hatred that burnout creates. Because you cannot recover while constantly attacking yourself. The second thing I did was remove the victim mindset. And to be honest, this one is actually very difficult because pain has a way of making us ask, why me? Why is my life always like this? Why is this thing happening to me? But I eventually realized something. Life wasn't targeting me, and the universe wasn't punishing me for any kind of offense. I was only experiencing what every human being experiences at some point, and that is hardship, that is difficulty, that is disappointment, and that is setback. The moment I stopped seeing myself as the unlucky girl that the universe is picking on, I became empowered again. Because victims wait for life to change, but the responsible ones ask, okay, this happened to me, so what's now the next step? And that question is far more important. The third thing I did was take a real break. After the results was released, I didn't immediately run back to my books. I rested, and honestly, I think most people need permission to do that. Not every setback requires immediate actions. Sometimes you need recovery before strategy. I remember going for an all-night party a few days after the result was released with my roommate, and my roommate was shocked because the normal me would have been in my room crying, feeling guilty. But this time, I allowed myself to breathe and I didn't regret it. Because that break did two important things. Firstly, it allowed me to rest because I was really exhausted. And secondly, it gave me the mental space to reflect. I started asking questions like, was my study method effective? I started asking questions like, why was I always struggling to finish the questions before the allocated time? For the first time, I stopped focusing on effort alone and started examining strategy. And that reflection changed everything. The fourth thing I did was focus on the next step, not the entire mountain. When I got that carryover, my mind immediately jumped ahead, and that only made me feel overwhelmed. So instead of focusing on the entire mountain, I focused just on my next step. And my next step was the next semester, not my entire medical career. Burnout grows when your mind carries too much at once. But recovery begins when you shrink your focus into just the next step, the next day, and that's just it. The fifth and the last thing I did was I made sure to always remind myself that a bad season is not the final verdict. This one is the most important one. I kept reminding myself that this is just a season and it's going to pass. Like a bad season is not the final decision in my life. I focused on this part very much because when we're in pain, everything just feels permanent. You start thinking this is how my life is always going to be, but it's not. That carryover was like a very huge something that time, but today I just tell it as a story. Believe me, your life will become very much easy when you have it in mind that one bad result cannot define your life. One season of struggle cannot determine who you become or your future. Keep going long enough and you realize that many things that actually feels like the end, they're always like a turning point. So if you are tired right now, if you are burnt out, if you are questioning yourself, if you are about to give up, the best thing you can do for yourself at this moment is to rest. You need to rest, reflect, adjust your strategy. Think about only the next step and remember, just because you are struggling today doesn't mean that you're already losing. Sometimes you are simply in the middle of a chapter that hasn't made sense yet. I believe this video will be useful to somebody, so don't forget to like and share, and most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you wish to see more of this video. So see you in my next video. Bye.